Now let's take a look at the polls with our favorite pollster, founder of John Zogby Strategies, John Zogby. John, thanks so much for coming on here tonight. And I want to start off by asking you a question about Nikki Haley. People keep talking about Nikki Haley. People keep saying, oh, she's having this big surge. And yet most of the polls that I'm seeing have her down, at that number 3 spot, even still behind Ron DeSantis. What do you account for this continued interest, John Zogby, in Nikki Haley and her candidacy? And is there something coming through in the polls that we're not quite seeing yet, in the mainstream?
Okay, good questions. We're seeing Nikki Haley break out of the pack. Now, the pack is way down low, but, she's gone from the typical 2 or 3 percentage points to second place or a substantial third place into double digits, which means media has to pay attention to somebody. And so she's getting the attention. She's also, by most accounts, including my own, quote, won the 3 debates that they've had so far. There's poise. She was good under pressure, has carved out a kind of interesting position on abortion rather than knee-jerk, pro-life. She's pro-life, but with some nuance that could appeal to soccer moms. And so in that sense, she's worth paying some attention to.
Right. And so with that attention, though, how much of that, because she's more sort of moderate, let's just say, on some issues in Donald Trump, how much of this then is being driven by media types who are looking for a horse race that they can confect and keep covering and to create some sort of possibility that it won't be Trump as the nominee? About
96.7%, plus or minus.
That's very
3.
precise.
I'm kidding. Let's just say a lot, okay? Yeah, and that's it. I mean, if the race is over and nobody is breaking out of the pack, and if Donald Trump is invulnerable, there is no story. So there's got to be a story. However, there is some history. You get into Iowa and New Hampshire, and this is, or at least used to be, an expectations game. So Trump may very well be ahead. He certainly is. But what if he doesn't score as high as the later polls show that he's going to score, or that a Nikki Haley comes in much higher, even 25% to Trump's 35%. Now you've got yourself a game. You've got some real media attention, some real money coming in, and some momentum. What George H.W. Bush used to call the 3 M's. And Iowa kind of sets the table for somebody for that to happen. If that doesn't materialize, Trump goes on. But if it does materialize, there's a strong second place. Bunch of other candidates drop out. It's Trump versus Haley versus somebody else. She's already polling reasonably okay in New Hampshire.
And then people start to ask the question about how does she go instead of Trump against Biden, and then I guess it becomes more interesting. But I want to zoom out now then to the national race here and some of these state-by-state races. We're talking about New Hampshire and Iowa, obviously, because those are going to be the big things coming up. That's the traditional thing we talk about. But I'm also looking at some interesting swing states and states that had gone for Biden and were crucial in 2020. Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, places like that. My read is that the Democrats are not doing well. So is there a more granular state-by-state problem when they look at the general election that Biden just simply isn't going to get over the line in these places? He lost in 2016, won in 2020, needs to hold in 2024.
I haven't seen one published poll in the states or, for that matter, in nationwide, including my own unpublished polls in some of the battleground states where Joe Biden is where he needs to be. He's behind in every one of the battleground states, with the exception of one where he's up by just 2 points. These are all states, as you know, just pointed out that he won, 3 years ago. And so the election is not today, but Joe Biden is not in good shape, heading into to 2024. And it's compounded then by the problem that even where there appears to be objective good news. The GDP is growing at a 5.2% rate. That's really good. Inflation rate of increase is down. Stock market is exploding right now. And yet the message that he's trying to get through is not getting through, compounded by his poll numbers.
And I mean, how much of that then is going to wind up having people asking the question about basically a generic Democrat versus Trump? I mean, are there people who will be polling these sorts of questions and saying, should we be thinking about a switch even as late as the convention?
You know, it's really interesting that your previous guest, Mr. Baker, pointed out that these two parties are at odds. These two parties are split. I mean, there is a crisis, between progressives and mainstream Democrats. It's a good thing both parties have each other. That's kind of thrusting them into the 40s. But Bobby Kennedy is out there, and there's, even with terrible press that he's getting, Bobby Kennedy's about 22% nationwide, actually 25%, some of the battleground states. So this thing is complex this year. Remember, Americans, 73% don't want Biden or Trump to be running. So that's what's making my life interesting these
days. That's pretty interesting. Not sure what it says about American democracy just at the moment, but John Zogby, we're going to have to leave it there, but we'll come back to you in the weeks and months to come.